I wanted to start, though, with an update on the drone situation from yesterday. It is remarkable how quickly. First, let me tell you what the news is of this, and then we can get into a bit more of the why does this matter? Where is this taking all of us? So you had the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, while we were on air yesterday, and I brought you a little bit of the commentary or the statement that he made, and also Chairman Milley talking about what happened with this drone. It turns out our pilot caller yesterday, we had a fighter pilot call in and say, you probably could, a drone is quite fragile, and you probably could clip it with a Russian Sukhoi fighter aircraft and bring it down. It looks like that is, as of now at least, what happened. There's actually video of it. It's pretty remarkable. It makes sense, though, right? There's a drone. So the drone has surveillance cameras on it. Like, the whole point of the drone is to see stuff and pick up measurements, right? It's a surveillance drone. So there's video, and the plane basically looks like it slams right into or near enough the drone that it brought it down. So that's the update on it. It was interesting, though, because yesterday you had Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley, when he was asked about whether this downing of the drone was an act of war, he did not want to give any definitive statement on it. Play clip 8.
I can tell you with certainty, though, that we have absolute evidence of the contact and the intercepts, et cetera, and it's very aggressive. You've heard about the dumping of the fuel and everything else. We have video evidence of all that. So there's no question that part of it's intentional. The actual physical contact of the aircraft, that I'm not so sure. So we'll have to figure that out. That we're not positive of that yet. As far as an act of war goes, I'm not gonna go there. Incidents happen, and clearly we do not seek armed conflict with Russia, and I believe that at this point we should investigate this incident and move on from there. But we will continue to exercise our rights in international airspace.
I thought that was interesting. He says he's not going to go there, and then he kind of goes there. Right? It's like, I'm not going to get into this. Look, we are in a situation where I want to step back from just this moment to remind everybody how we got here in the first place. 2016, the entire Democrat apparatus is completely convinced that Hillary Clinton has about a 100% chance of becoming the next president of the United States. As we know, that did not happen. And they came up with this crazy, and it really was crazy, story about Trump working with Russia, and, the Russians, maybe they hacked voting machines, or the Russians, engaged in some disinformation campaign. They spent some money on Facebook. There were some bots, whatever, that Russia helped Trump steal the election. And so then it became mandatory for Democrats who wanted to be in good standing to view all things Russia as the most monstrous and horrible of any country in the world. If you had asked a Democrat who had voted for Hillary Clinton, who was going on MSNBC or whatever, first of all, they clearly thought it was a bigger threat than China, which is crazy. But if you had even said, who's a bigger threat to international stability, Russia or North Korea, it would have been Russia, right? So they created a mass hysteria within the Democrat Party about Russia, and that has dramatically impacted the relationship and the perception of the relationship that certainly Democrats and a lot of Republicans have about the U.S. and Russia, and pushed it in an irrationally negative direction. And so we no longer had the kind of relationship with Russia where, yeah, of course, Putin's a thug. All this stuff is true. She meaning Xi Jinping is a thug. I mean, a lot of these governments that we have to do. What do we think of the Saudi regime? Not exactly democratically elected, is it? Right? There are plenty of authoritarians that we have to do business with, that we have to work with. And we do so because it is ultimately in the interests of the American people, because that is what we care about. I don't know. You could even say it is an America First perspective. Isn't it fascinating that Donald Trump was able to turn around the phrase America First was a pejorative. It was America First. You take it all the way back, and people will talk about Charles Lindbergh, but even to use the phrase America First, isolationist. And worse than that, isolationist and worse. But hold on, that's the most succinct way to put the mentality that we should have in this country when we're looking at American foreign policy and interests, which is what is to the benefit of the American people. That's step one. Sure, there are other considerations. We want to be, a kind and just and good people and good stewards of the environment and good neighbors to the rest of the world. All that, yes, of course. But priority number one. But what's fascinating is that Democrats, in part because of the Russia collusion delusion and their irrational hatred of Russia, they no longer can see the ups and downs of this. It's just Russia is the bad guy. We have to do anything we can to crush Putin and the Kremlin. And that is our first priority. I mean, you sit there, you say, well, hold on a second. How did we get to that point? I keep talking to conservatives about this issue, including a lot of veterans. And one thing that we all seem to agree on is of the Ukrainian people, they were invaded. It's wrong. What Russia's done is awful. We're rooting for Ukraine to be able to fight. But we also want to at least be able to have a conversation about, one, how much of this is supposed to be U.S. funded and backed. Hey, we might be heading into a recession, folks. Not just according to me, according to Goldman Sachs and pretty much everybody who's paying attention. And you may be struggling to pay your bills. Biden wants to raise your taxes. We all know this. Oh, it'll just be for the fat cats. When has that ever been true? It's never true. Biden wants to make it so that you have less money to spend because he knows how to spend your money better. And that includes spending $100 billion a year on the war in Ukraine. You might start to think, hold on a second. Is that really in the primary interest? Well, what matters more to the American people? That you can pay your rent or that we are sending enough Javelin missiles to Ukraine? I think that's a fair conversation. Having people say, oh, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. $100 billion is a lot of money, actually. $100 billion matters, even in U.S. budgetary terms. A year, keep in mind. There is no chance of this conflict ending anytime soon. The people who keep saying Russia is almost defeated have said it every 3 months, maybe every 2 months since the beginning of this war, basically. Ever since Russia didn't take Kiev, or Kyiv, as we're now all supposed to call it. So they've been wrong over and over again. Russia is not about to be exhausted or defeated. That is a fantasy. So can we have a forthright and honest discussion about what are really the interests that we have and how far are we willing to go? Well, the answer is no. They want to, just like we saw with COVID and so many other things, they want to silence you. They want to shut you down. You're a Russian stooge. You're a Russian stooge if you question the extent that American tax dollars should go to fund a war thousands of miles away. And when they're asked how this is in the American interest, you have Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, saying something that's very similar to what we've heard from others, Biden, Kamala Harris. It's this very vague stuff that sounds like what you'd hear from somebody in a high school model UN conference about the international rules-based order. Play 7.
In terms of the importance of Ukraine, first of all, we've seen bipartisan support for providing security assistance to Ukraine throughout up to this point. I expect that we'll continue to see that going forward. We've heard some senior leaders on both sides of the fence say that. And so I expect that we'll continue to enjoy that support. But Dan, Ukraine matters. It matters not to just Ukraine or to the United States. It matters to the world. This is about the rules-based international order. It's about one country's ability to wake up one day and change the borders of its neighbor and annex its neighbor's sovereign territory. And as we've seen, countries around the world don't think that's a good idea.
This is about the rules-based international order. Okay. Interesting. So when he says that that's the justification, first of all, the fact that it has bipartisan support, that's not an answer, and I don't care. When we're asking a question, when someone's saying, why is this every time I ask or I hear someone try to answer why is this a key U.S. national security interest? The response is not compelling. They say, oh, well, they'll go into NATO countries afterwards. They'll invade Poland afterwards. That is crazy. Look at the trouble they're having just with U.S. financial and materiel backing in Ukraine. So they're not just going to take on Poland, they're going to take on all of NATO next? That is lunacy. But people say it. People who think they're really smart say it. Oh, yeah, Poland is next. Whew. Okay. But then they say something about the international rules-based order or something that sounds like it comes from a boilerplate UN conference. And I sit here and I say, okay, if that's so true, if we should have done all this, why was it that under the Obama administration, there was a fear of sending Javelin anti-tank missiles and Dragunov sniper rifles to the Ukrainian military because it would have been considered provocative to Russia and contrary to American interests after Russia had already effectively invaded a part of eastern Ukraine, after Russia had taken Crimea? How much worse, I ask you this, how much did it matter to your life that Crimea became a part of the Russian Federation years ago? I think we all know the answer to that. How much did it affect your life, your safety, your financial security, your future when eastern Ukraine fell under the dominion of the Russian Federation in all but official name, and the fighting continued on for 7 years? The answer is it didn't matter to you. But now it's supposed to be all or nothing. You see, no one's rooting for Russia here. No one is blind to the realities of the Russian aggression and the thuggishness of Vladimir Putin. We're trying to look at what, first of all, was the bipartisan consensus on this, even under the Obama administration. Interesting. The Trump administration just got real quiet for a while. But anyway, under the Obama administration, seize Crimea and do all this stuff. Okay. And at the end of the Bush administration, by the way, you could talk about what happened in South Ossetia and Abkhazia and in Georgia, effectively, little pieces of that taken off. But now we're supposed to believe this is a key national security issue for us. Instead of saying, because this is what I offer in response, we need a negotiated settlement and Ukraine is going to lose some territory in it. How about that? How many lives could be saved there and how many hundreds of billions of dollars could be saved of the taxpayer if we took that approach? Does it feel good? No. Is it justice? Not really. But saving lives in order to exchange territory, that is basically the history of all warfare and humanity stretching back for quite a long time. Right? You end wars through negotiation and settlement. And often that includes an exchange of territory. We can't even talk about that right now.